Welcome to the Liberated Life. Get ready to free your mind, body, and spirit in business and pleasure. Now here's your host, Robin Quinn Keene.
Hi, and welcome to today's micro episode here on the Liberated Life. We are working through the card deck that I created called Trigger Warning, Let Your Triggers Transform Your Life. And today I'm coming to you with a trigger, which I have felt this week. It's about disappointment. I feel disappointed. I'll give you a little backstory on that just so you know what I'm talking about. I launched the Digital Detox Secrets program for moms who have kids who are using their screens a lot, moms who are using their screens a lot and want to break free of that and let their kids have their childhood back, and to help moms feel in charge and in control and not pulled one direction or another by screen time. Very excited about that. I worked very hard on it. The program's been around for about 3 years, and I hired a coach to help me get this out there in the world. If you've ever run Facebook ads, you know there's a lot of testing that you must do to make sure that the ads resonate with people and the images are attractive and get people's attention, and then that the message in the ad is the same as the message on the landing page where you send people. And it's just a big test, right? But I had super high expectations, which were not met this week. And so when I pulled up this card today to present it to you, I went, oh, I can relate to this card this week big time. I feel disappointed. So let's talk about it. If you've ever been disappointed, you know that it's a really discouraging feeling to be disappointed. And we can be disappointed for many different reasons. Usually, though, the disappointment stems from an unmet expectation. Here are some questions you can ask when you feel disappointed. What outcome were you expecting? And what outcome were you attached to? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being excited about an outcome or anticipating an outcome. That is really normal. We do things and we anticipate a particular result from everything we do. It could be that we are intermittent fasting and we expect to see our blood sugar levels change, or we've been walking every single day for 3 months and we thought that those jeans that we were attempting to fit back into, that they'd be fitting better at this point. You could be taking a class and expecting that you did a ton of work and that you would have a particular grade. I remember that happening to me in graduate school. I had felt I was a good writer. That was the feedback I had always received throughout my entire education. And in graduate school, after I turned in my first paper, the professor that was my advisor said to me, "You write like a third grader. I don't know how you got accepted into this class." Something like that. Oh, that was shocking. And it led to a disappointment and me even questioning if I belonged there because it didn't meet my expectations. I had expected a better grade and I never expected that kind of remark. And so I was disappointed. I was disappointed in myself. I was disappointed in my professor for sure, because my expectations were very different. You could think about any situation where you didn't get the result you were expecting, and that can lead to disappointment. This week, I've had to ask myself, well, what were my expectations? And were my expectations realistic? And if they weren't realistic, can I just live with the fact that I had unrealistic expectations? The other piece around this is sometimes we are led to believe that if we do X, Y, and Z, we will get a particular result. And so then we can feel that we were misled and had expectations that were unrealistic, not because we made them that way, but because we were misled. Maybe that's happened to you in a relationship. You meet somebody and they say, "Oh my gosh, you are it, and I really can see a future with you." And so you take those words and you think, wow, they can see a future with me. And then you find out, I don't know, sometime later that that was not their intention at all. Being disappointed is not unusual. That is, I think, in my experience, pretty typical. when I'm disappointed, I have to ask myself, what outcome was I attached to? Was it real or was it a perception that I had? Not making myself right or wrong, not about that, just noticing. Again, with any of these triggers, if you see things coming up time and again and you see a pattern, that's where it's really important to take a step back and go, there's a pattern. There's a pattern. And for me, disappointment is a pattern. All through my life, there's a level of me having an expectation and it not being met. And then I go into disappointment. So I'm aware that disappointment for me is something that I get triggered by. So this week, instead of making it bad and making myself wrong and how could I be so silly or stupid or whatever, it was more like, oh, that's interesting. So I had an expectation, and what could have helped is if I had said, what can I expect to see this week? Instead of me making up what I thought I was going to expect to see and not getting there. Because as soon as I connected with my coach, she said, this is normal. This is part of the testing process. This is part of evaluation. This is a part of seeing what's working and what's not. So I jumped to the conclusion that I had been wrong and it was wrong. And she said, no, it's not. So even checking in when you feel disappointed, like, well, okay, how did that happen? Here are some journal questions you can ask, which are, if disappointment is something you deal with, do I regularly experience disappointment with the same people or with similar situations? Very interesting when you just sit with that and start to see the patterns, if you have them. And again, not good or bad or right or wrong, just information, right? And is this disappointment based on expectations I have? And finally, could my expectations be based on a misperception? Those are all great questions to ask. And then where do you go from here? Well, I know from what I experienced this week that I could have asked additional questions. The more clarity I have about something, the more realistic perhaps my expectations are. I think when somebody tells me something, I tend to be very optimistic, and I also know that I underestimate the effort and the time something will take to come to fruition. So my natural way of being is to jump to the vision of the future, and not saying I don't expect to work for it, but somehow I don't ask enough questions to get a realistic picture of what I can expect. And so then I have an unrealistic picture, which then leads to disappointment. I hope that helps you just to notice when you're disappointed, what's actually happening. And is there any sense of maybe a lack of information or a misperception on your part that is setting you up for that experience of disappointment? All right, that's what I have for you today, and I will look forward to seeing you again on another episode of The Liberated Life. And by the way, if you are interested in a digital detox to help you and your kids put down the screens, get back in touch with nature, with each other, with their childhood, with your relationships, I would love it if you wanted to go check it out. Also, if you like these conversations and you'd like to connect with me personally, also just reach out. Come on into my community, our Table of Joy, for free for a couple of weeks and connect there. Or I'll put a link to my calendar if you want to have a conversation, because I love to do personal coaching and help people overcome some of these emotional challenges that they're facing. All right, have a great day. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend on Apple Podcasts, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcast. You can also get more great information at quittingculture.com.